Hey guys, how's it going? Welcome to a brand new episode of the Boss Babes Lifestyle Sports Podcast. I'm your host, Brittany Baldy, and we are freaking back at it again. I am so thrilled. Baseball season is back, baby. I had no idea when this freaking lockout was going to end. My fiance right now is still a free agent, hoping to get that big phone call, so fingers crossed for that. But joining me today is the very lovely Dana Lawrie. She is a mom, wife to former pro baseball player Brett Lawrie, and she is a blogger. Her freaking Instagram at Candidly Mom is absolutely hilarious, and that's actually how I came across her as a person. She has 3 kids. I think she literally just gave birth like a month or so ago. She looks fantastic, by the way. I don't know how the heck she does it. She is very candid on social media, all about her mom life, has a blog called Candidly Mom. And let's just jump right into it. Dana, how are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Super good. I'm so glad to have you on here. I know you are super freaking busy, and we needed to kick it off. We have to break the ice a little bit. If you had a superpower, what would it be and why?
If I had a superpower, I've always thought that at first I would want to fly because who doesn't want to fly and like avoid traffic and get everywhere fast? But I am slightly afraid of heights. So I don't think I would choose flying. I think that I would choose to be invisible, which sounds mildly creepy, but I'm a total introvert and I'm always such an observer anyway that I would just love to be invisible and just like be able to go anywhere, slide into any room that I want to slide into, be a fly on the wall, and just Houdini without anybody knowing I was there. I don't know if that's super creepy, but that's what I'd choose.
That's kind of a really interesting answer. No one has actually said that at
Really?
all. Like, that's why I find it really interesting
So
because, like you
it's
said, a
so
lot of people would say fly, a lot of people would say teleport, but because you're afraid of heights, being able to become invisible, I guess, would be the next best thing, right?
Yeah. Now that you mentioned teleport, that is also very good. That's really good now that I think about it. But maybe if I were invisible, I could just like slip onto a plane for free and just get everywhere free. I don't know.
Excellent answer. And speaking of traveling in airplanes, I want to talk a little bit about that on this Boss Babes Lifestyle Sports podcast. For my Boss Babes fanatics, they love getting to know my special guests behind the scenes. So I wanted to just dive into a little bit about your family life before you met your husband, before you had kids, before you started blogging, any of that. Where did you grow up when you were a child, and how was your family life? Did you have any siblings? Were you an only child?
Well, I am born and raised on the east coast of Canada. So I was born in Newfoundland, lived there until I was 5, like this tiny little place off of the coast of Newfoundland, which now is like population less than 600. That's where I'm from. And then so we moved to Nova Scotia when I was 5, and I was raised there my whole life. Went to university in Halifax, Nova Scotia. So yeah, I'm an East Coast girl. Grew up on, like lobster and the beach and harsh winters and beautiful summers. And yeah, my whole family still lives back there. I have one brother, he's older than me by 5 years. And my mom and dad still live there. My dad and his wife live in Halifax. My mom and her fiance live outside of the city on like this beautiful property on like 40 acres because it's Canada. You can buy massive pieces of property. But yeah, that's where I'm from. That's where I was raised. So
I
as
love the fact that you brought up the point of growing up in the East Coast. I myself am an East Coast girl myself. I am not from Canada. However, my mom's parents, they're both from Nova Scotia, that whole area. But I grew up in Boston, very close to Maine, upper Northeast in America. For those Boss Babes fanatics that already know that, I apologize for mentioning it again, but just so that Dana can kind of get to know me a little bit as well. I think it's awesome that you grew up by the water, going to the beach, and enjoying that lobster. Do you have any top childhood memories growing up in Canada and any favorite vacation spots that you enjoyed going on with your family as a child or in your early teens?
Memories and like vacation spots. We never traveled too far when I was a kid to go on vacation. We always like kind of hopped around where we were. So we'd go to Prince Edward Island and like New Brunswick and the Bay of Fundy and stuff like that. That's one place that I would love to go as a kid. And if I went back to visit and stuff, like the Bay of Fundy, and it's in New Brunswick, I believe. Yeah, that's kind of what we did when I was a kid to go on vacation. We would go like camping or go to a beach spot kind of thing. We'd always stay in that area. You know, I didn't grow up with like a ton of money, so it's not like we were doing huge vacations by any means, but it was still fun. I mean, you know, you're an East Coast girl, and I didn't know that you had family from Nova Scotia, which is so cool and so crazy because it's such a small place. But yeah, we always made it fun because in the summer it's so beautiful. You can go, I mean, less than 50 miles, I feel like anywhere in Nova Scotia, you're going to be on a beach, you're going to be on the water. So that's kind of what we did when I was a kid. We just took total, especially because the winters were so harsh, we just took total advantage when the summer came around. Like if we could do a camping trip, if, you know, rent a little cottage down on the beach somewhere, you know, a couple of hours from home that we could drive to. So that's kind of what childhood was like for me. Yeah. Which I think is really great. I still try to instill that onto my kids, like the simple things, just going to the beach with family and family friends and like getting a big group of people and just the simple things.
Honestly, I fully can agree with that. Again, me being an East Coast girl from the United States, my fiance actually is from North Carolina, but he doesn't live along the coast. He actually lives like closer to the middle of the state. And when I tell you, Dana, the amount of times I say to him, babe, I am never living somewhere that's not near an ocean, I say it to him all the time. Like, we're currently looking at houses in the Florida area for if and when he decides to retire from baseball, or in the off season when we get that opportunity to have our own house. I'm like, I have to be by an ocean. I just love being able to pack up and go snorkeling and just be in a swimsuit and enjoy the sunshine. Actually, our whole wedding theme is going to be loosely based on the color palettes of the beach, like sandy shades and blues and such. So, girl, I'm fully with you on the simple things and the beach. Is there anything interesting not many people know about you and your younger years, whether it be like a special talent that you might have or anything in general?
Actually, growing up, I've got my family invading here. I have my oldest son coming in. Some people would know, but I feel like this is the only thing. Like, if there were ever a talent show, I would have to do this one thing because it's the only thing I've really learned to do as a kid that's considered a talent. But I've played the piano. I took piano lessons from the time I was 6 years old until the time I was 18. So the entire time I was in school until I went to college, I actually took piano lessons, and I used to compete every year in classical piano competitions, which, pardon me, but I guess if I had to have like a childhood talent, that was definitely it.
And were there any favorite meals that you could speak about when you were younger that like your mom or your dad or maybe you helped cook? I mean, growing up in Canada, I know you guys, especially in the wintertime, enjoy those hearty type of meals. Is there anything in particular that you guys enjoyed eating as kids or into your teens, or maybe even now? What do you like to cook for your own children?
Well, growing up, obviously I loved seafood growing up being on the East Coast. I loved like lobster and all that stuff, but it was crazy because my dad was actually allergic to all shellfish. So the only time my mom and I could ever eat it is if he was away on a camping trip or something like that. So I feel we didn't eat it a ton, but that's like the staple that I remember eating as a kid was eating lobster and like scallops and like mussels and all that stuff with my mom while my dad was away for the weekend because he was allergic to it. So that, and I mean, I would personally, I would eat fish any day, like salmon, cod, you name it, you know, whatever it is. Like, I love seafood still, but my family is not a huge fan. I mean, my husband doesn't eat it whatsoever. My kids don't eat it. So For us, we stick to like pretty much the basics. I mean, we eat chicken all the time. Chicken meals, your classic. Like last night we had barbecue chicken, mashed potatoes, broccoli. I was like, this is such a classic family meal, you know what I mean? So we kind of stick to the classics, but I like cooking, so I like to mix it up sometimes. I love to make different like pasta dishes and stuff like that as well.
Sounds delicious. I know it's about 5:30 Eastern time right now, and you are making my mouth water. We are speaking of seafood. Actually, Dana, this is the first time I'm going to try making a seafood boil. So Ryan and I
Oh,
recently went to Alabama 2 weeks ago, and I don't know if you have ever at any point traveled with your husband and because you like seafood decided to get a seafood boil. For those of you guys that are listening, my BosBabes fanatics, essentially it's like a southern style. They take potatoes, some sausage, whatever type of seafood that you want, whether it be shrimp or crawfish, calamari. They take a bunch of items and essentially boil them together and put this amazing spice on it, like a mix of butter and oil and Cajun. And I'm going to try making that for the first time ever tonight, and I'll have to let you know how that goes.
that's a thing. I've seen these. I've never done it because it's not a tradition where I'm from. And like now, nobody in my family would eat it, but I've seen so many of those. I've seen them on TV a bunch. So I feel like the first time I ever saw it was on, have you ever heard of that? Wait, what is it? Floribama Shore? They did it on Floribama Shore with like the corn and dumped out the huge pot all on the floor and everything. So it looks amazing.
Yeah, that's exactly what it is. You add corn, a little bit of potatoes, you
Yeah.
dump it. Sometimes there's crabs tossed into it. I'll have to send you a photo of mine later on tonight after I make it. Fingers crossed. I don't know how it's going to come out, but I fully loved learning about your childhood years. Thank you so much for sharing the fact that you grew up in Canada on the East Coast. It sounds like you were pretty close to your family, which I think is awesome. And the fact that you were into piano, but you didn't really know if you were interested in competing or not, but you felt like you kept on wanting to do it because you seemed like you were pretty interested. Thank you so, so much for sharing all that info. I love looking at your baby right now. So freaking cute.
She's just staring at the lights around her. She doesn't eat anymore, so.
Let's hop right into it because it is a sports podcast. I wanted to ask you, obviously you did some instruments when you were younger. Did you play any sports as a child? And did you look up to any sports figures in particular, if any, whether they be male or female?
I have never been I've never been great at sports. I've always played soccer. I feel like that's the classic. Everybody starts their kids in soccer. I played soccer growing up through my teens and stuff like that. I've never really played overly competitive sports though. It was never something I was great with. Like I always say to Brett, like, thank God you've got that down. Like you have hand-eye coordination, you can throw, you can do that stuff. Like we always kind of joke like I'll help them with like their math homework, help them write their essays and stuff like that, and you can teach them how to throw a ball because if I'm teaching them how to throw a ball, they're not making it very far. So I can fully admit I've always been someone who, I take up running or maybe going to the gym or whatever, taking care of myself in that way, like exercising, getting my body moving. But as far as sports and being an athlete, like it's not me. And I have no shame admitting it.
I love that you mention staying active in other ways, and we will touch upon that shortly once we get speaking about you being a mom. Because if you look at Dana, I mean, obviously you guys are listening to this as a podcast, but if you go check out her at Candidly Mom Instagram, you would never guess in a million years that this woman not only has 3 kids, but she literally just gave birth within this past year. Like her stomach is completely flat, her skin is flawless, hair looks amazing. You wouldn't know that she has 3 kids if she didn't mention that she has 3 kids. So all the power to you. Please stay with us. You are going to hear straight from Dana's mouth how exactly she stays fit. Maybe she's going to give you guys some tips on what she likes to eat, how she fits her workouts in with her 3 children, and much more. You guys are now listening to Dana Lawrie. She is a amazing mom and wife to former pro baseball player Brett Lawrie, and she is a blogger. So you just mentioned that you yourself obviously aren't that athletic, but you like to stay fit. Were there any sports that you enjoyed watching when you were younger, whether that be basketball, soccer, football? Did you like to do anything fun actively, such as hiking with your family?
Um, Definitely like to do a lot of outdoor stuff with my family and friends growing up. So, I always love going swimming, going out hiking, going to the beach. Like in the summertime, anywhere that there was a body of water, I was a total fish. So that's, I feel like in the summer as a kid, I was so active, even though I wasn't necessarily playing a bunch of sports and stuff. From the time the sun was up to the sun till the time the sun was down, like I was outside running around with my friends, like I said, going swimming in somebody's pool at a beach, something like that. So that's kind of what I did, to stay active as a kid. And then now that now that I'm a mom, it's obviously harder to get the time in to do stuff like that. But I've been trying, like, especially, I had a baby 3 months ago. We've had 3 kids in the last 4 years. So, like, fitting it in is not always easy. But I've been just trying to incorporate it a little bit here and there. I've been dropping one of my kids off at childcare at the gym, which, like, you have to take advantage of that kind of stuff. It's like, I'll, take the help where you can get it kind of thing. And if not, then I bring her usually along with me for my workouts. I'll either use her. I actually posted a video to my Instagram recently. Recently, just like, she didn't want to, as you can see now if you're watching this on video. If you're not, you can probably hear her like cooing and hiccuping right now, but she likes to be attached to me, so that kind of makes working out a challenge. But I actually posted a video recently. I just kind of used her as a weight and did a workout with her. If not, I'll just kind of set her on the floor and do a workout, but just kind of fit it in where you can. And also, like, I also have to be kind of understanding that maybe I don't get an hour at the gym. Maybe today it's like we all go outside and we go for a walk, and I walk the dogs, and we go to the park and we run around, and like that's how I manage to be active that day. So also have to be more open-minded when it comes to like what is working out, like, oh, I just went for a walk with my kids, but we were out there for 45 minutes. I ended up carrying like 2 bicycles and a baby home, and so I guess just having kids in general and keeping up with them in and of itself is a workout. So
Thank you for sharing all those tips and advice for the Boss Babes fanatics that are listening. If you are a new mom or thinking about becoming a mom, just like Dana is mentioning, if you don't have time to spend an hour or two at the gym, you simply lifting up your child, carrying those bicycles, making dinner, walking around, doing chores, going food shopping with your husband, pushing the shopping cart, essentially are all still active activities. So even if you think mentally, hey, I don't have time for workout today, you're technically still getting your steps in and lifting a little bit just by simply lifting your child up and changing diapers, as Dana is mentioning, which is excellent for me to know too, because I've been stressing out about what do I do when I have a kid, because I like to stay fit and healthy. And just thinking about what Dana just mentioned is something that I have to keep in the back of my mind as well. I know we've been poking the bear a little bit. Let's jump right into married life and becoming a mom. I'm going to jump in and ask you, how did you meet your husband, Brett Lawrie? But before we get into that, I'll give some little baseball statistics about her husband. That way you guys can get to know who he is behind the scenes. Brett was drafted in 2008 in the first round by the Milwaukee Brewers. He is also Canadian, just like Dana. Baseball player, played in high school baseball for the Langley Blaze. He played second and third base, played for the Major League Baseball under the Toronto Blue Jays, Oakland Athletics, and the Chicago White Sox. So, Dana, I'll just ask you, how did you guys meet, and were you ever dating while he still played baseball?
So we met in 2000, whatever year he was, his second last year with the Blue Jays. I can't remember. Either his second last or his last year with the Blue Jays. Either way, that's when we met. It's kind of an embarrassing story, but I feel like so many people already know it that it's just like, it's whatever. So he had tweeted something out, and like at the time I barely used Twitter, had like handful of followers. Like I'm talking like 10 or 12 kind of thing. Never tweeted, but I just like followed a few people. And so I replied to one of his tweets, and he ended up following me and then sending me a message. Me just like, he's got like 200,000 Twitter followers. I'm thinking like nothing of it. So anyhow, he follows me, he sends me a message, and then we just kind of get to chatting. And then given that he was a Toronto Blue Jay at the time, he just kind of like, not that he got a weird vibe, but he was like, can we exchange phone numbers and like FaceTime so that I know I'm like really talking to a person? Because again, like I legit had like no Twitter. And so he's just like, are you a real person? So anyhow, I making sure he's not being catfished. So we kind of like quickly exchanged numbers after meeting on Twitter, because it's like, let's move this off of social media. Then we ended up finding out that we were like apartment neighbors, like my building's here and then his building's right next to the other one. And we're like, we shop at the same grocery store, we eat at the same restaurant, like we go to all the same places around here, and we just had never met. So then we decided to meet, obviously. And things started off like quite slow, to be honest with you. Like I was working full time, and he was obviously playing baseball at the time. And so we were both just like super busy that we maybe saw each other like every couple of weeks. And then he went away for the off season. And then we just kind of got to chatting again in the off season. And then I went to visit him for his birthday one off season, and we just kind of like have been together ever since. So not the most conventional story, but that's how we kind of grew to be together.
That's actually a really interesting story. And I like that you are, no pun intended, because your page is called Candidly Mom. I like how you're so candid about being open about how you guys met. And don't feel any shame in your game, girl. A lot of people nowadays meet on dating apps or through Twitter, or they bump into each other really quickly at like a bar or something like that. My fiance and I included actually met one night. He was in town in Boston, bumped into each other at a club in Boston. He slid in my DMs 2 weeks later. Here we are 2 years later, engaged. So, amazing. I mean, it happens. That's sometimes the way you meet your special forever. So all the power to you guys.
For sure. No, I totally agree. Like, and even especially more so these days, like in-person meeting, I don't know how you meet people in person these days. So it's like, you know, between Instagram, TikTok, Twitter, Tinder, all of this, I feel like I've met genuine, like made actual friendships on social media as well. So it's like, I do not throw any shade to people who are like, I met the love of my life on like a dating app or social media, or my best friend I met through Instagram. It's like, no, totally. It's how we communicate. So you just kind of have to deal with it. Get on board or don't.
I agree with that. I mean, even just you and I today, me having you on this podcast is simply because I came across your amazing posts on Instagram. I'm like, I need to get this girl on my podcast. Not only is she funny, I love the fact that she has kids. I love the fact that she's a baseball wife. Like, she's getting on the podcast. So just like Dana is mentioning, for those of you guys that are listening, don't be afraid to reach out to people on social media. Obviously, don't be creepy about it, or if people are being weird with you, learn how to like disconnect from them. But also know that there are some genuine people out there that you can either date or become friends with, or you might even find like a lost long cousin. I've heard some interesting, weird stories through social media and everything in between. So social media is the way of life, as Dana has mentioned. So it sounds like you guys were still together while he was still playing. Are there any top memories of being a baseball mom and wife that you can share with us? Are there any stadiums that you enjoyed visiting? Any custom outfits that you liked putting together, if you did any of that at all?
Well, yeah, we were dating for a little while. He was with the Jays, got engaged when he was with the A's, and then we were married right before he played with the White Sox. So I've been around a little bit. The unfortunate part, we didn't have kids until after he was done playing. So that's a major bummer. I know I would have loved it. I mean, he would have loved for our kids to see him play, but they didn't. But fortunately, there's a lot of video of it. So, but myself, like I said, that's why I ended up moving out of Canada, actually, is because he got traded with the Blue Jays. He and I were living in Arizona during the off season. He got traded, I want to say in like December, January or something like that. And so I was kind of like, do I like throw in the towel and move back to Toronto, or do I go with this guy to California? And so obviously I chose the latter. Really interesting. I loved going around to different stadiums. That was kind of the one perk of not having kids at the time. I had my one dog, and she used to actually come with me to a lot of the away games, not to the games, but we flew from Oakland to Seattle. I brought my dog with me, and like she'd be my little like travel buddy, and went to Seattle, went to Boston. Boston's one of my top, I would say, favorite places that I've gone to with baseball, because just the energy when you're in there, it was like, wow. It's an old stadium, so you get that feel, and just like you just feel it from the fans. Like maybe it's because I'm an East Coast girl too. There's just something about Boston. I always say that, like, out of all the away games that I've gone to, I certainly haven't been to every stadium, not by a long shot, but I always say the ones that I went to, I feel like Boston's just got something. Like if you're a baseball fan, that's like the one you've got to get to. Go to Fenway. Fenway, right?
Yes, I love, and I don't know if you're like pulling at my heartstrings because I'm from the Boston area, but I think it's amazing that you love Fenway Park.
But I mean, it's just got that baseball feel. You got the feel for it. I mean, I love Yankee Stadium too, because it's like a freaking it's unbelievable in there. Like you can get anything to eat you could imagine. You can have sushi, chicken fingers, whatever. Like you can go here, there, and everywhere. But if you want that baseball feel, I feel like that's just Boston.
I love it. Yes, I completely agree. If you are a baseball fan, Yankee Stadium, going to Fenway Park, the like old school stadiums that have been around since basically the dawn of time, like basically since like the dinosaur era, I feel like these stadiums have been around.
Mm-hmm.
So I completely agree with that. I actually just recently put up a post on my Instagram at Brittany Baldy talking about Fenway Frank. So girl, I'll ask you, have you ever had a Fenway Frank? And if you've had a Fenway Frank, what do you put on it? Me personally, I like to eat it plain Jane, which means I don't put anything on it, just because it's so like tender and crisp, and when you bite into it, you want to hear that snap, and like it's a freaking Fenway Frank. You can't just like you can't doctor up a good steak with A1 sauce, you can't doctor up a good hot dog with ketchup and mustard. So if you're getting a hot dog at a stadium, especially at Fenway, if you eat hot dogs, Dana, what do you put on it?
I for sure put ketchup on it, and usually a little mustard as well. I didn't get one at Fenway, and I've got to say, like, it's not my first go-to for baseball food, but if I did, I mean, I'm definitely putting ketchup and mustard. I saw that you posted that you just eat it like naked, and I was like, never. I can't. Not for me, but I love the authenticity, and I totally get it. Like if somebody like smothered a good steak in some terrible tangy sauce, I'd be like, what are you doing? But when I saw that naked hot dog, I can't do it. I need ketchup, at least ketchup.
Okay, so you guys listening, we have one vote for ketchup on the hot dog, one vote for plain. So we want to hear from you guys. Slide in my DMs at Brittany Baldy. Let me know what you like to put on your hot dogs, whether it's a Fenway Frank or you're in Dodger Stadium, wherever the heck you're watching your baseball this upcoming baseball season. I want to know what you BosBabes fanatics put on your hot dogs. You guys are now listening to Dana Lawrie. Her Instagram is at Candidly Mom, and we are talking to her all about meeting her husband, Brett Lawrie. He played for multiple MLB baseball teams. He grew up in Canada. So did Dana. I think it's so freaking cool that they met through Twitter and they had no idea that they shopped at the same freaking food shopping spot. They lived next door, essentially. They were basically destined to be together. They just had never met up until bumping into each other via Twitter. So thank you so much for sharing so much insider details on your personal relationship. Before we switch on over and talk about being a mom and blogger, because I know you're very busy, you probably want to get dinner started for the kids. One last baseball related question. How was it being able to become friends with some of the other baseball wives and girlfriends? keep in mind, for those of you guys that are listening, it can be tough when you're a baseball wife or a girlfriend or a fiance. As Dana talked about, you're moving from city to city, you're moving from state to state. You're having to decide, do I leave Boston? Do I leave Canada? Do I move in with my future husband, whether it be in North Carolina or California or wherever the heck he's playing? So, Dana, can you give some insider tips on what it's like having to move at the drop of a hat and also having to make some new friends?
Yeah, it was tough. I definitely don't miss that part. I love having just being, a little more stable. Trades are super rough. Like I said, that was the reason we ended up leaving. I ended up leaving Canada is because he got traded. So it's rough, not knowing anybody. Like you said, you're going somewhere where you don't know anybody, don't have any friends, and like open. But you also have to be realistic. Making friends with a new group of women every, potentially 6 months or even sooner. It's difficult. Like you're gonna have different people who enjoy different things, and at the time I didn't have kids, so that was tough too, because I found a lot of the other women had kids, and so they do a lot of stuff with their kids, and like it's not really something I can join in on. But I did always make friends with like I said, everybody gets along, but you always kind of make friends with a handful of people, because that's just what life is, right? You make friends with 3, 4, 5 different women. So I always managed to make a handful of friends, which obviously made it a million times better. But you just have to, and it's tough for me because I mentioned like I'm totally introverted, but it was tough for me to like spark up those conversations. But I had to get past that and just be like, all right, we're all in the same boat. Like there's no time for me to just kind of sit here and wait for somebody to talk to me. Like you have to branch out a little bit, and as uncomfy as it is, just like, hey, how's it going? My name's, so like it sounds so simple, but as being engaged to a baseball player, if you're doing this all the time, it's like every time you're on a new team, it's like the first day of school all over again. And it's that way for the guys too, for sure. I know that they feel that way, but they're kind of forced to interact. But as far as the women, it's like, you're brand new all over again every time you get traded. So I had to be brand new 3 times. I mean, I would do it a million times over again if Brett were still playing, but it is tough. Like you said, it's tough to do that, to make that adjustment and just find an entirely new social life every time you're traded.
Well, thank you for sharing that. I know it's hard for me to convey through my own personal social media. A lot of people see it and they think that it's fun because you're traveling, you're experiencing new hikes and meeting new people and new restaurants. And yes, don't get me wrong, just like Dana is mentioning, we wouldn't trade it for anything. It's kind of like my fiance Ryan likes to joke around and say that like his cleats are kind of like his passport around the world. Like you get to essentially play in Japan, play in California, play at Fenway Park, play at Yankee Stadium, and it's fun to be a part of that. But at the end of the day, we are still human, and sometimes it is hard making friends, lugging your kids around, packing up, and just going. Even taking your dog. We have a freaking 80-pound lab, Dana. Like it's hard.
Yeah.
So we have to
seriously
figure out hotels and stuff for our animal.
Mm-hmm. And then finding places that are, like, and it's always left. In my experience, it was left on me because Brett had other things to do. But finding a place that's pet friendly, that accepts a 6-month lease and all of that stuff. So it's amazing. And like I said, I get to go to New York and Boston and LA and all of those places.
Well, Dana, thank you so much for sharing so much insider detail on how you met Brett, what it was like being a baseball wife and the traveling and having a dog throughout everything and having to make new friends and all of the in between. It sounds like you had a lot of fun and it was challenging at times, as it is for myself. I'm looking for the upcoming baseball season. But switch on over into becoming a mom, having 3 kids. I know you already spoke about literally just giving birth 3 months ago. Again, you guys hear her baby right now kind of cooing and crying in the background because she has a freaking 2.5, 3-month-old. Like that's mom life. It fits her perfectly because her Instagram is at Candidly Mom. She also has a blog called at Candidly Mom, and you can find that directly on her Instagram and the link in her bio. I love this about her Instagram page, and I quote, it says, honest, everyday mom life with a side of humor. So, first off, what inspired you to blog about your mom journey, and what are some of your favorite memories becoming a mom so far?
Basically, the reason I wanted to start blogging and like sharing about my motherhood journey on Instagram and stuff like that, I just, when I became a mom, like I didn't, first of all, I didn't have a ton of mom friends. I only had one like really close girlfriend who had had kids before me. So I didn't have a whole lot of people to bounce stuff off of. And just some of the things like, you know, a few months down the line after having my first son, I started experiencing a little bit of postpartum anxiety and stuff like that. So I had nobody to bounce these kind of things off of, and nobody had really talked to me about all the realities of actually being a mom and like being in the depths of it, and you know, being so sleep deprived and all of that stuff. So I was just like, I'm just going to start talking about my stuff and, you know, kind of meet people that way. And so that's kind of what started it, was just me feeling like a little bit isolated in motherhood. So just that was my way of reaching out to other people who are potentially in my boat as well. And as far as becoming a mom, I mean, it's so hard to pick a favorite memory. I mean, as crazy as it sounds, like giving birth to all of them, like that that's like the most insane magical thing that you'll never forget. So like my 3 births were, you know, top 3 things since becoming a mom, but other than that, it's all the little everyday things, you know what I mean? Like nothing that's major. It's, you know, like for instance, the first time he had ever been in the ocean, total core memory for both of us. It was on the East Coast in the Atlantic Ocean, like just, you know, 15, 20 minutes from my mom's place, and total magic. Like seeing kids touch the ocean for the first time and like splash in waves. I feel like that was definitely, like I said, that was a locked in core memory. Just seeing them do things and experience things for the first time, like always my favorite in motherhood.
And I love all of your posts on Instagram. One of my favorites, and I thought this one was hilarious, and it goes along with the side of humor that you talk about on your Instagram. You recently put up a funny moment, and I quote, it says, it wasn't really like a quote, but it was a blowout post. Like you were
Yeah.
jokingly talking about the fact that your baby had a blowout. So
Mhm.
essentially, it was a selfie of pretty Dana just kind of looking at the camera with the back end of her baby in a onesie, and you could see a little bit of the poop like on the butt, and she's jokingly saying like, hey, my baby just had a blowout, but you're just being candid about it. So
Mhm.
let's talk about some of those cute funny moments that you put up on your Instagram. I also really enjoyed a little funny video that you put up recently. It was of you kind of like dancing around, you were pouring coffee, holding your baby in one arm, and the caption said something to the effect of, how many times I was up at night with the kids last night, and the background music kind of went along with, I think it said like 1 time, 2 time, 3 time, 4 time.
Right.
So let's discuss some of that humor and how real that is for some of the women that might be listening to this podcast.
That was just, my son is now going to the store. You're going to the store, Nash? Okay. You got to go downstairs and get a shirt on. Go downstairs and get a shirt on, then you'll go to the store, okay? I mean, for me, just life in general, like you cannot take yourself too seriously. And like with motherhood, obviously it's serious, but at the same time, like you just really have to laugh it off sometimes. And like, I wish I had embraced a little more of that in the beginning of my motherhood journey, but it goes by so fast. And it's like, at the end of the day, you just have to laugh at some of the stuff, like you talked about with the blowout up her back. It's like total, you know, it's crazy, it's disgusting, it's chaotic, but at the end of the day, like you just really have to laugh at it. So I like to incorporate that too. Like I have my serious moments on Instagram, but at the same time, like it doesn't always have to be so serious. Like sometimes we can just totally laugh at this, that our baby just blew out their entire outfit, and maybe we're in the middle of Target when it happens. I mean, I was at home, but like I feel like the more we share that kind of stuff, the more we realize we all have these embarrassing, really hard moments, and we can all just kind of like have a laugh together at the end of the day. So I guess that's my goal with like the humorous side of it, is like, let's all just have a laugh at this together, because we're all doing it.
Well, Dana, thank you so much for coming on this podcast today. I would love to have you on here again sometime in a couple months, maybe recap your baby's getting older and what they're doing over the summertime. I don't like to have my guests on just once. I like to have them on multiple times. It's almost kind of like an audible reality TV show in a way. Thank you guys so much for listening to this episode of the Boss Babes Lifestyle Sports Podcast. You got to hear straight from Dana Lawrie. Shout out your social media because I'm sure people want to hear from you more and see some of these funny posts that we were just talking about and be able to connect with you, how it is becoming a mom, what it is like with potential postpartum depression, what it's like to lose the baby weight. I'm sure people would love looking at your social media and reading your blog.
For sure. Well, thank you for having me on. I apologize. I mean, I'm sure once you put it out, it's going to sound great. But I mean, once you're listening to the edited version, Brittany has to do a whole lot of cutting because I have had a whole lot of baby cries, diaper changes, and all of that going on. So thank you for having me. I appreciate you being so patient with me. My Instagram, TikTok, like I said, I don't really use Twitter all that often, but it's at Candidly Mom, and always just trying to share honest stuff. But like I said, not take this stuff too seriously at the end of the day. So check it out if you want to come hang out or have a laugh or have a cry.